In 1964, the government of Brazil, under the Goulart regime, was a very doing progressive things. They were changing. They were changing, bringing Brazil into the 20th century. And all of a sudden, this move that the United States, the CIA, moved, and all of a sudden, the colonels in Brazil took over. And all of a sudden, everything that was positive, everything that was going good in Brazil was destroyed. And the same thing happened with Lula when he became president. The United States did not want Lula because Lula came out of the working class. And Lula was fighting for the working class. And all of a sudden, there's no way that Lula can bring back the way that Brazil was moving. And it was in a very positive way. Changes were being created, positive changes were being created. In 1973, with the overthrow of Allende in Chile. Right now, with the overthrow of Evo Morales in Bolivia. Evo Morales changed Bolivia. Evo Morales put the native people in Bolivia where they should be. And the whole change of the economy. I mean, this man was transforming Bolivia, but it was contrary to the interests of the United States and those Bolivians who are not natives. And they were there, and little by little they were able to get rid of this person that if we listen to him, if we pay attention to him, we can say, this is a great leader. I have had the opportunity to talk with Evo Morales. And I was in prison when I heard Evo Morales say this thing, because he was part of this coca growers, and he went into this room where they were having this thing about drugs and cocaine, and he stepped into the room and said, La coca no es cocaína. Coca is not cocaine, because for centuries, the natives of Bolivia use for different reasons, for different purposes, and it's not something that is harmful. They were not making cocaine; they were using the plant itself. But little by little, somebody went and little by little converted that coca leaf into cocaine. And I want to point something out that sometimes people forget. When the United States wanted to defeat the Contras in Nicaragua, the Contras were financed with coke money. They would bring cocaine, and Mina Airport in Arkansas was a place where they were bringing the coke, and at that time, Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas. They were bringing it in. Cocaine was not a drug that was being used in the poor communities because it was expensive. And all of a sudden, they brought the coke into the United States. They transformed that into crack, and crack became a very addictive drug all over the United States and probably some parts of the Caribbean too. So this is to finance the Contras, and that's a reality that cannot be hidden because they caught an airplane with the coke, and so all of a sudden it was discovered where this coke was going to be delivered, and all of a sudden we have a crisis in many communities because the young people were becoming crack addicts. So that's the reality that we face. There's another thing here. I would invite anyone to read Victor Machete's book on Vietnam. Victor Machete was a CIA agent. And he all of a sudden found out something that was happening, that Operation Phoenix was being financed with heroin. And the heroin was being, the laboratories were in Laos. They would take the process heroin into Thailand, and from Thailand they would ship it. And when we would go into New York City, we had an epidemic of heroin, big epidemic. There's a movie called American Gangster, which is based on a real story. I was in prison with Frank Lucas, one of the persons who was involved in that in the whole thing. And I got to meet Frank, and we talked about it. So this is something that people don't know, people don't pay attention to, but it's important because that's how we get destroyed. That's how addictions are terrible. So how is it that we change this world? How is it that we work on this world? And I think there is the potential, there is the strength. If we want to find a solution, all problems created by men have a solution. We have to dare to change, or we have to change and do whatever we need to do and work as hard as we can, but we can definitely change, create at least some of the changes that we need right now, and make this a better and more just world. It's not only Puerto Rico. I'm hoping that if we do something positive with Puerto Rico, that will be an example that other countries can follow, and we will be helping to make this a better and more just world. Thank you.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry.
um,
Oh,
it's an honor to have you here, Don Oscar. I had first heard from you on NPR like a few years ago when you were released from prison. So it's an honor to have you here at our school. A question that I had, I remember when Hurricane Maria had passed, there was question of whether why it was that Puerto Rico wasn't on its way to statehood, and I wanted to know just what your thoughts were on if you think that statehood or independence would be better for the future of our fellow Puerto Rican citizens.
the problem that I have with statehood is that once that happens, we will have another Hawaii or another Alaska. If we go to Hawaii right now, this is what we will discover, that if we go to the prisons in Hawaii, mostly all the prisoners were Native Hawaiians. If we go to Alaska right now, mostly all the prisoners will be Native Alaskans. So I'm afraid, I would be afraid to lose my identity. I would be afraid to lose my language, my culture, my way of life. I think that uh, Puerto Ricans, Puerto Ricans, we should never disappear anything that exists, that is there, that has been there for a long time. Our history of fighting for independence is almost 300 years old already. We go back to the 18th century, and we see the people that were put in prison, the people who were forced into exile by Spain. But we continue. There was a continuity given to wanting Puerto Rico to be independent. And this is under the Spanish regime. And I don't think that it's positive for a nation to be transformed into something that is not, that was not. I believe that Puerto Rico, the place itself, the people that are there right now, if we ask the overwhelming majority of Puerto Ricans if they want to stop being Puerto Ricans, and I dare to say that speaking in different places, being a Puerto Rican, for me, I really feel that the overwhelming majority of Puerto Ricans would like continue being Puerto Ricans. There's nothing wrong with Puerto Ricans, if they need a job to be in the United States, and also probably to play a role in the United States in making sure that if there's going to be a government, that government represent the interests of the people and defend the people who work, the people who produce, and not to focus its power on those who are powerful. So I think that from my point of view, if Puerto Rico stops being Puerto Rico, if it becomes a state, we will see the same thing that we see in Hawaii and the same thing that we see in Alaska and the same thing that we see in any country that has been taken over and transformed into something that it was not. So, from my experience, from what I know, I think that we do not need Puerto Rico to be annexed. Puerto Rico was annexed in 1898. It's still under the yoke, the colonial yoke of the United States. And if we listen to the discourse, the speeches of those who have the power, we will realize that the possibility of Puerto Rico becoming a state is almost zero. There was in the 90s, I don't know if anyone followed what was happening in the 90s, but there was the senator from Washington State and Puerto Ricans who were supportive of independence. There was this move to find a solution. And annexation was one of the points, but never moved into the area of annexing Puerto Rico or giving independence to Puerto Rico. It remained Puerto Rico is a good colony, it's a good place to exploit, it's a good place to really do what has been done with Puerto Rico for 21 years. So I think that I don't know about other Puerto Ricans, but I can speak about myself. I want to be Puerto Rican. I cannot be anything else. I've lived in the United States. I'm very familiar with the United States, but I am a Puerto Rican. And I think that the worst thing that a Puerto Rican can do is to say, well, I want to stop being Puerto Rican. And if Puerto Rico is annexed, we will see in Puerto Rico another Hawaii. And let me tell you, if people, Hawaii became a state and Alaska became states when there was a good size of citizens from the 48 states that had moved there. And that's how we ended up with a Sarah Palin, and that's how we end up with different governments. And finally, Hawaii, the native Hawaiian, if we were to talk to the native Hawaiian right now, they'll tell you what I'm telling you. If we're going to Hawaii, talk to the native Hawaiian. There's a Hawaiian doctor that in 1993 decided to change the diet. He said, the problem that we have in Hawaii with the diseases that are suffering can be changed if we go back to our own natural diet. And he proved to be right. It was proven that when he developed that diet, those who had diabetes in 8 months' time, they were back to normal again. So I think that we don't have to change ourselves, and I think that will be dangerous if we ever go in that route. I cannot support a statehood for Puerto Rico.
Thank you for your speech and all this information. My question may be a little bit naive, but I will ask you anyhow, which is, do you think it is, or do you see as a feasible goal the independence of Puerto Rico in a medium term period? How do you see this?
It's very difficult to predict, but I go back to what happened in July of last year, and I think that what happened in July was done by very young Puerto Ricans, and they were calling for the independence of Puerto Rico loud and clear. They were also demanding changes. They were also calling for the governor to step down. They were also calling for a change in the political structure of Puerto Rico. So I think that towards the future, I think that there's the possibility of Puerto Rico becoming independent. Right now, PIP was a party that primarily older people. For this coming election, probably, I think it's 25 young members of the PIP who are running there for mayor, different positions in different municipalities. And for the first time, these are young people, 25, 30, 35. No, I don't think that there's a single one that is over 35 years old. And they have, some of them have the potential. I mean, the way they're waging their campaigns, they probably win some of the offices that they're running for. This will be the first time in Puerto Rico's history that we will be able to accomplish that. So I think that there is something there that is happening that is positive. And I think that we may see it, we probably not, but I think that the way things are moving, there's that possibility.
Oscar, thank you so much for coming out and speaking to our people here. And thank you all for coming out and being part of this program. Um, Oscar is going to be in the neighborhood for the next 7, 10 days. He's going to be at La Peña tonight. He's going to UC Berkeley for a big evening, and we kind of like want to give him a little break before he does that. He's going to be at Stanford, at a number of places. He's even going down to Santa Barbara, down to a community center, and I think the university there as well. So he's a busy man. He's doing a lot of stuff on this West Coast tour. But please give him a hand for coming out and speaking to us.